All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're talking about something that is absolutely essential for any big industrial company in Malaysia, but it's something a lot of people don't fully get. We're talking about labor relations. And trust me, it's way more than just HR paperwork. It's a huge strategic piece of the puzzle for keeping things running smoothly. So, let's get into it.
So, have you ever wondered what the real secret is to keeping a massive factory or plant operating without any major hiccups? It's not just about having the best machines or the smartest logistics. The hidden key is all about the formal relationship between the company and its workforce, especially when that workforce is organized. To really understand that key, we've got to be on the same page. So let's start with the absolute basics. What exactly is labor relations?
Okay, so at its heart, labor relations is the official system for managing how a company's management deals with its organized employees. And when we say organized, we're talking about employees who are part of a trade union. Now, this isn't just some casual agreement or company policy. In Malaysia, the whole thing is governed by law, specifically the Industrial Relations Act of 1967. That act literally sets the rules of the game.
You can pretty much boil it all down to this simple dynamic. On one side, you have the union. They're the collective voice for all the employees. And on the other side, you have the employer, who represents the company's management. Labor relations is basically the bridge that connects these two and manages that entire relationship.
So, let's take a closer look at these two main players, because you can't understand the game without knowing who's on the field.
It's a pretty straightforward distinction, but it's an absolutely critical one. The union's main job is to take all the individual concerns and interests of the employees and present them as one powerful, unified voice. Meanwhile, the employer's side is there to look out for the company's interests. The whole system is designed around the formal dance between these two sides.
Okay, so we know who's involved. The next logical question is, how do they actually interact? And that brings us to the very core of labor relations, the bargaining process. This process has a name, and it's called collective bargaining. This is the formal, sit-down negotiation between the employer and the union where they hammer out the nitty-gritty details of employment for all the union members. This is really where the action happens. So how does this whole negotiation journey work? Well, it usually follows a pretty clear path. First, the union comes to the table with its agenda, basically a list of what its members want. Then, the real work begins. Management and the union negotiate. They go back and forth, they debate, and hopefully, they find some common ground. The ultimate goal? To reach a final agreement that everyone can sign off on.
And listen, this isn't some abstract theoretical stuff. Let's make it real. Take a petrochemical plant, for example. The kinds of things they'd be negotiating are super practical, everyday issues. We're talking about wage adjustments, how much the annual bonuses will be, what's covered under medical benefits, extra pay for working tough shifts, and even the basic working hours. This is the stuff that really matters to people on the job.
So, let's say the negotiations go well. They finally reached a deal. What do they get at the end of it all? Well, that brings us to something called the collective agreement. The outcome of all that bargaining is a formal, written document called a collective agreement, or CA for short. And you have to understand, this is a huge deal. The CA is a legally binding contract. Once it's signed, it's the law of the workplace, and both the company and the employees are required to follow it. And here's the point that you really need to remember. A collective agreement is so much more than just a piece of paper in a filing cabinet. It is the official rulebook for the workplace. Think of it like a constitution that governs everything from pay and benefits to how discipline is handled for every single unionized employee.
Okay, so this all leads us to the most practical question of all. What does this mean for the manager who's actually on the factory floor? What's their direct responsibility in all of this?
You know, a manager in this situation is basically juggling two different sets of rules. You've got the Employment Act, which sets the minimum legal standards for all employees in Malaysia. But then, on top of that, you have the collective agreement, which has a whole set of specific, negotiated rules just for the unionized staff. The manager has to know both of these documents inside and out.
And let me be clear, this is absolutely non-negotiable. The source material puts it perfectly. It says the manager must be acutely familiar with its clauses. Not just kind of aware of it, but an expert in it. Why? Because every single day when they make decisions about overtime or approve leave or handle a disciplinary issue, that decision has to line up perfectly with what's in that CA.
Because if they get it wrong, well, the consequences are serious.
Not following the CA can spark official industrial disputes. It can even cause the government's Industrial Relations Department to step in, and no company wants that. We're talking about the potential for big fines, and in the worst-case scenario, it can lead to incredibly costly strikes or slowdowns that can bring the entire operation to a grinding halt.
So I want to leave you with this final thought. In today's world of automation and AI, it's easy to think that these kinds of human negotiations are becoming less important. But what if the opposite is true? In a world of machines, maybe managing this formal human-to-human relationship is actually more critical than it's ever been to achieve real industrial harmony. What do you think?